since we've last spoken, there has been, I guess, news in the divorce world regarding a certain athlete. Now, I cannot pronounce his name. I know you can pronounce it, but it's this gentleman
Oh, yeah.
here.
I am saying Achraf Hakimi.
Achraf Hakimi, yes. He is, I believe, a soccer player or football star.
Yep.
I believe, and he's 23. And his wife is an actress. And she, I believe, is 36 years old, and they were married for 2 years. The story behind that is they were married, right? But when she filed for divorce, it turns out that he put everything under his mother's name, which is the older woman he's kissing over there on the far left. So now she is not entitled to anything. It's all under his name. And men are praising that, even being like, whoa, like, hey, that's pretty badass. Hey, one for the guys, right? But as my emotions calm down, I'm like, wait a minute. Can this actually fly in the US? So who better to ask that question than a divorce attorney with 17 years experience? So can that fly in the US?
I'm going to probably piss you off right now and give the standard lawyer answer, which is it depends.
That's fine. Okay. And I know this is a lot of variables that we have to consider. And, I get that. So in general, like, what do you think?
And of course, in the US, every state has its own laws as it pertains to family law and divorce. So I can only speak as an expert and specialist, board certified family law attorney for the state of Florida. But I think across the country, it's safe to say that probably would not fly. It would be very difficult for it to fly. One of the things that I read about that scenario with Hakimi, am I saying it right? Hakimi, the soccer player?
Yes.
Or the football player, is that even his salary from the soccer team was going to his mother's account and therefore in his mother's name. So even his salary was being redirected, and that wasn't considered his salary. That would never work here.
Okay.
One of the things that we see a lot of times in family cases or divorce cases is someone owning property, usually real estate, and it's held in someone else's name. And if we can prove that it's really held in someone else's name, but for the benefit of somebody else, we tend to call that a constructive trust without getting too legalese. But there's terms, we're not blind to this, that people will redirect assets, divest themselves of assets to make it look like they don't have anything in their name. But there are ways around that. I don't know what the subpoena powers are in France, but we have very strong subpoena powers in the US. So we're able to subpoena your employer. We're going to get your records. We're able to subpoena the banks directly.
Okay.
And usually things are very traceable. So that was really interesting. I know even in the family law world here, people were talking about that case, and it was just like wild that he actually got away with it.
Yeah. So, and again, just to kind of simplify, what you're saying, because my brain trying to get all the terms down, right? So in other words, if somebody did that in the US, so let's say if you were a NBA player, right, and you had everything going to your mom, all the checks from the Washington Bullets were going to the Wizards now. I'm sorry, I just aged myself. All the checks from the Washington Wizards are going over to his mom. His wife files for divorce. That wouldn't fly because, again, her attorneys could then reach out and find out what he makes annually and still ask for that amount. Am I understanding that correctly?
We would be issuing subpoenas to his employer, the NBA, whoever it is. We're going to see exactly what his salary, his income is. And that's great if he wants to put it all in his mother's name, but he's still going to be treated as if that's his income for purposes of support. Yeah.
And that's what I thought, because it's a good soundbite and it's a good viral video to share and make a comment on. But in the reality of, law and everything happening in states, and with every state having their own rules and regs, I was curious if that was going to fly. And I was also curious, let's say, okay, they do that, right? Would that open him up, or anybody here in the US, to maybe a civil suit? Like, okay, what you did. Yeah, it was clever here in the divorce court, but is he maybe open to some civil lawsuits from his ex?
I don't I don't really see a cause of action in the civil world, because once it's decided, adjudicated in family court, it's open and shut. She is not going to have a cause of action in some separate civil action. That they're dealing with it in family court, which is civil court. It's just,
oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's like a subdivision of civil court.
Yeah.
But hiding the assets, that's something that we do see. Like I said, a lot of times it's you can hide it in someone else's name, hide it in a trust. But a lot of these things are traceable. And if we can prove that it's really being held for the benefit of somebody else, then it's.
So it sounds like more or less it's like a firewall. It's only like a temporary, like you're only preventing the inevitable from happening. You're just more paperwork.
It's divorce planning 101 for sure. We see it. People will move money. They try to get clever, but at least in Florida, we have like a very standard kind of like 3-year look back at what has historically been happening with finances. And if we want to, we can ask to go even further back. It just depends on the factual scenario. So luckily in the US, we have something called discovery.
Okay.
And that means
what does that mean?
Means we're going to conduct certain discovery. We're going to do certain things, issuing subpoenas, asking the other spouse to provide documentation that if they want to refuse to cooperate, the court's going to intervene and there's going to be consequences. So we're able to discover, right? We're going to gather information and find things out. And there's usually very easily a 3 to 5 year look back. So when people are divorce planning, just keep in mind what you're doing today and moving forward. That's great, but we're still going to look back and kind of have an idea of what was going on during the marriage.
Nice. And I know this is totally not off topic, but I was a loan officer, and you said 3-year look back. That's kind of like looking back 2 years in your credit history. So
yeah, and people freak out about even 2 years. I got to get you 2 years of what? And in divorce,
yeah,